Better earnings, better data, bonds rallying this week, equities rallying this week. Let's start with the number one question of the week. Is inflation on a sustainable path back towards 2%, or is there reason to believe it reaccelerates later this year?
We don't know, John. It's going to depend on what happens to service inflation. We need service inflation to come down before goods inflation goes back up, and goods inflation will go back up at some point. So we need a lot of help on the service side. But John, you cannot get in the way right now of the soft landing narrative. That narrative is building momentum. It is stronger than it was last October when it handed off to something else. But everything we've seen so far this week, CPI, PPI, the banks, it's all been about a soft landing narrative, and that narrative is on the go, and I wouldn't get it in the way of it right now.
Andrew Hollenhorst, the city, has changed his view on policy over at the Federal Reserve. He says hike in July, was looking for a hike in September. He's pushed that out to November. He said this on inflation. The soft inflation story may last for several months and possibly the remainder of the year, but still tight labour markets and a rebounding housing market risk of re-acceleration in inflation late this year or early next year. Mohamed, talk to me about that window, that soft landing, soft inflation story. You sound a little bit more constructive, not just on the economy, but dare I say this market too?
So we are definitely in a good window for inflation data. It will last into September. Partly it's base effects, partly it's what's happening around us, partly it's the feed into production from the PPI. It is what happens thereafter, John. And when you look at the components of inflation, it is critical, and you just cited, it is critical that we don't get certain components moving back up before service disinflation has established traction. That is the bet. There's two big bets out there right now. One is that the inflation decline will be linear. Too early to bet on that. And the other one is that the Fed will stop after the next rate hike, which is in July. That if they're data dependent, they stop. If they are worried about their credibility and they remember the bad experience they had in 2021, they may want another rate hike as insurance. I would stop if I were them, but this Fed has surprised me so many times, John, that I don't know what they're going to do.